किरण रिजिजू जी, श्रीमती वंदना चौहान जी।
So India is home to the world's largest population of tribals who are scattered in the length and breadth of our country. They are marginalized, they are vulnerable to varied kind of impacts. And therefore it is more than apt that the chair has decided, the House has decided to discuss the Ministry on Tribal Affairs and the issues concerned with that. And therefore, I share the feelings of Rijijuji ji, and I congratulate the House for having taken this up. So, tribal people accounting to 8.6% of India's population face several issues and challenges, ranging from health and nutrition to lack of education, erosion of identity, alienation. They face fear of displacement, rehabilitation, unemployment, exploitation, non-implementation of FESA, and the list can just go on endlessly. In my limited time, sir, I wish to flag only 2 pointers, the limited time on education and health. So education in case of tribals is not only for economic development, but more so for building their inner strength in meeting new challenges of life. Education forms the basis of development and empowerment. And therefore, all efforts need to be made to increase the percentage of the educated amongst the tribals. So I wish to point out a few steps that the government, that the ministry needs to take in this behalf. We see that the population, the adult population staying in the Adivasi areas, the tribal areas, are not educated. And therefore, obviously, they do not understand the importance of education. And even if we provide schools in the vicinity or we provide residential schools, we find that the parents are not keen on sending their children to school. Instead, they would send them for remunerative employment. And therefore, we will have to create massive awareness amongst the adult population in the tribal areas to make sure that they understand the potential of education and they send their children to school. Second point, sir, we see that of the more than 600 tribes that live in our country, there are various dialects and various languages that they speak. Unfortunately, when they go to schools, the curriculum, the course material is all in the local state language, maybe Hindi or other languages. However, the Adivasi children therefore wean away from schools because maybe they find difficulty in understanding the language. And therefore, course material needs to be prepared, teachers need to be trained so that the children can be taught in the local language in their particular dialect. The third point, sir, I would like to point out that a lot of teachers are seen to be remaining absent from these schools. And therefore, we need to see if we can train teachers, if we can select teachers from the area who stay in tribal areas so that they understand not only the culture, but of course know the language and therefore can connect better to the children who they are meant to be there for. Another point I wish to stress upon is vocational training and skill development needs to be taken up with topmost priority. So traditional art and craft is very famous from all the Adivasi areas. It has to be supplemented with better material, with technology which is not only useful for them to procure material, but also sell it online wherever possible. The inherent knowledge of the Adivasis of the forest goods, the forest produce, the natural or the medicinal value of the plants is there amongst the adult population. We have to make sure that this is translated to the younger generation also, and therefore special efforts in that behalf also needs to be taken up by the ministry. So my last point as far as the education is concerned is that a special effort needs to be taken by the ministry to develop leadership qualities in young men and women. Because these are the young men and women who can lead their communities, who can promote educational and economic interests, who can protect the Adivasis or their tribals from social injustice and also all forms of exploitation. So coming to the health component, we all agree that tribal communities have poor health and the access to healthcare is very, very low. However, it is saddening to see that there is no reliable data which is available on the tribal health. I don't know how the ministry has not, or how this government has not felt the need when they talk about technology, when they talk about data collection. How is it that they have not been able to collect data? We may have made mistakes, but now at least if after 2014 everything is changing in this country, then I think that also should have been taken up with right earnest. So the reliable data has to be done, have to be put on record. There are no comprehensive policies that meet the need, and therefore there is no application of mind in that behalf. My second point in this behalf is, sir, that tribal healthcare in our country usually falls within the ambit of rural healthcare. The assumption that the problems and needs of tribal people are same as rural population is absolutely incorrect. And I'm sure we all prescribe to the fact, we understand the fact that a village is a more organized section, whereas a tribal area is an area where they have absolutely no education and have to move around in jungles and forests, hills and mountains and such kind of terrain. And therefore, the kind of diseases that they contact is much different from the rural area. And therefore, we need to separate out the tribal needs of the health needs of the tribal people. So the next point I wish to point out to the minister is draw his attention to a report called the Tribal Health in India, Bridging the Gap and a Roadmap for the Future. After 4.5 years of long study, presented a report on August 9, 2018. The committee made certain recommendations. It was the first such study of its kind in our country. The recommendations that were made, there were 10 or 11 of them, but I would like to read out 4 which I feel are important. The first recommendation that was made, that an annual budget equal to 2.5% GDP per capita basis must be allocated and spent on tribal health care. That means rupees 2,500 per tribal. Where is that money? Is there any such provision made for that? The report has been tabled way back in 2018. It has not seen the light of the day. The second recommendation it has made is that there should be a constitution of a tribal health council and directorate for tribal health at both the center and state. This is obviously because a lot of credence has been given to the need that we have to change the health systems of the Adivasi area or the tribal areas. But unfortunately, no such step has been taken to focus solely on tribal health, generation of data, reviewing finances, and monitoring programs. Third, sir, it further recommended that service delivery needs to be restructured so as to make 70% of its resources target primary health care, providing a wider basket of healthcare services at the lower level. Not done again. And lastly, one of the last points out of the 10 is match all the above with adequate human resources and infrastructure. Again, nothing has been done. We know that the doctors do not go into the tribal areas. They do not want to go and practice there. And therefore, we will have to find out some novel measures to see whether we can train youngsters in that area to become paramedicals. And this kind of initiative needs to be taken. Unfortunately, nothing has been seen. Both the ministries welcomed this. They promised action. Nothing has happened. And I understand that the Niti Aayog also has recommended that the Ministry of Health should initiate such action based on the report. I wish to draw the attention of the House and the Honourable Minister that in 2020, that is 2 years after the report was tabled, Dr. Bang wrote to the then Minister for Health, Shri Harshvardhan ji, and I quote, "During these 2 years, an estimated 1.5 million tribal people have died, while other problems like malaria, malnutrition, pneumonia, diarrhea, tuberculosis, and snake bites continue to take the lives of tribal people. The ongoing COVID-19 epidemic may create havoc, as the tribal people might be particularly vulnerable due to lack of health care." This was an important intervention from a person who had prepared a detailed report. The response was, and I quote, "Due action will be initiated." This was in 2020. We are in 2022. There has been a budget. We are talking about tribal affairs being topmost priority of this government. What has happened to this report? Has it seen the waste paper basket? That is what I wish to ask. Thank you, sir.